Hey everyone, I'm gonna give this like 2 more minutes or so. Let me try to expand, get myself ready, get everything ready. Okay. Trying to make sure I have everything ready. I'm gonna start telling this story in about 1 minute, and I'll, be online and all that kind of good stuff. Make sure I got my outline together. So I want to give everyone time to get in and all that kind of good stuff. Thank you for being here, those that come to watch. For this, I need to be organized, so that's what I'm trying to do. Make sure that I am organized so that you all get a good story, because it's kind of a story tonight. All right, so how is everyone doing? Those that decide to come in and all that kind of good stuff. Let me see here. Um, I'll do this. I normally don't do this. At followers, at highlight. Is that what you do? Highlight. I don't see it. Let's see. I'm just updating some things and then I'll get started. Okay, it says that part's disabled. All right. And I'll just do a welcome. And then I'm going to get started, tell the story, and then go from there. All right, it's 6 p.m. and I promised that I would start at 6 p.m. So if you see me looking over here, it's because I wanted to make sure I was going to be organized tonight. So my scripting and everything is over here just to make sure I can tell everything. I'm in my office, which is also my prayer room. It is also the space where on this side I have some of my ancestral studies and the things that I've been doing ancestry wise up there. I have some Air Force stuff around this way and just some other things. My Peloton is right here, and it's here so that I can, get some exercise when I need it. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. I am working on a few, Choctaw words and things, and so I want to say Halito. I hope I said that right. That is hello in Choctaw. So I'm Kim, as you all know. I wanted to come on real quick or not and just kind of talk through some of the studies. So I would say I'm a storyteller, I'm a veteran, I'm a proud historian of sorts. I love tracking the ancestry. I love getting to know my roots and all that kind of stuff. So today I'll be sharing about identity, belonging, culture, and divine timing. You all know I love numbers, and so there is some timing in here. I'm not going to go deep into the numbers because this one is mostly about the history and the heritage. And so this is not just a story, it's about healing and reclaiming. So for those who have questions, every so often I get questions about healing and reclaiming. Feel free to ask your questions and we'll go from there. So how did I get on this track of finding out my family's history and heritage? It was, I was a little girl. We had a family member die when I was a little girl. I believe this is Aunt Elrie who died. And also those that are in my family know who she is. I think it was Aunt Elrie, and I think I was a little girl. And there was a lot of big things I remember about this funeral. One, everything looked big to me. I was a little girl. I remember a fence. I remember us being parked somewhere. I remember there being family everywhere. I remember all kinds of stuff. And so I even remember when we went to the cemetery for the burial. I remember my mom back then was telling me, she still does this to this day. My mom was telling me the story of all the different headstones and all the different people that are buried in the cemetery. So my family, that part of the family, my mom's side of the family, they're buried in a segregated cemetery in Stringtown, Oklahoma, which is near Atoka, Oklahoma. And when I was a little girl, whenever I would go visit Oklahoma, I thought it was the countryest place I had ever seen. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I thought it was country. And I remember thinking to myself, I could never live here. And I'm glad I didn't have to, right? So I remember thinking those thoughts as a young person, not knowing any history or heritage of my family, or the fact that them being there was survival, right? I didn't know any of that stuff. I was just young, and I was used to whatever, I think, whatever the 80s and 90s technology was, whatever they weren't doing, that's what I was, used to seeing. And so, um, yeah, I remember asking a few questions. And so it piqued my interest then. I didn't see any men in the cemetery in this area where the family was buried. I saw nothing but female ancestors. And so that made me ask more questions like, well, where are all the men? Where are they? Right. I grew up in a household with my mom and my dad. My mom had us in church very young, right? So I grew up seeing men. And so it had never occurred to me at that young, tender age that some people didn't see men regularly. And so it was a surprise to me as a little girl looking in the cemetery that there weren't any men. I was like, where are the men? So that piqued my interest. So the I didn't know it was a segregated cemetery at the time. So the segregated cemetery, the fact that I wasn't seeing the men, and then just seeing all the family around, that was just some of the great things. And so my family is still buried there to this day. Last year, many of you know, we had quite a few deaths in the family, and so we made that trek up to Oklahoma to bury our family. So then this search came in waves. It didn't come all at once. So for those who are trying to figure out, hey, do I track that? So let me go back. So the reason I'm doing this today is because I was asked by one of my military veteran friends who outwardly looks African American, and she said that I also have Choctaw heritage, Choctaw ancestry. How do I find out? I said, do you know the names of any of your ancestors? Because you need the names of your ancestors to track them. And you need that because of the Dawes Rolls and all the other stuff. And I say that because that's what I'm about to get to now. And so when I was a little girl, and so, well, maybe when I was a teenager, now we're in the 90s. Mom had taken us down to the Choctaw Nation to get us registered with the Choctaw Nation in the 90s. So I've been registered with the Choctaw Nation since I was a teenager. So she went to get us registered with the Choctaw Nation, and back then there was this big book, and you needed to know like where your ancestor was, what page, all kinds of stuff. So I remember seeing this big book, and it had the list of the ancestors' names and all that kind of stuff. And so she showed me in this book where ancestors were, and this is their name, and this is your ancestor by blood. And so I had always seen the ancestor by blood, which is a different page than what I ended up finding out years later. And so that was, so all I knew was this female ancestor, Choctaw, or matrilineal, which is the female ancestor. And so the female ancestor and the children were on the roll. There was not a man there. So once again, there wasn't a man there, and I was like, what did I miss? I didn't know the full story yet. I still don't know, but I know a lot more about the story now. So we're going to skip ahead. 2016, 2017, that's when I want to say that's when they started opening up those census records from over 100 years ago. And so then that was one of the times I was able to track them in the census and say, oh, here's the ancestor. Oh, here's her husband. Oh, oh, here's all the kids, right? I think that's all I really was tracking back then. And back then, I wasn't tracking the Trail of Tears migration. I was tracking the Great Migration of African Americans out of the South. Because on my dad's side of the family, they did the Great Migration from the South to North and West. His part of the family went West. And so I was really tracing them. I was not tracing the Trail of Tears. Half of that was because I didn't necessarily believe. My mom told me, but I didn't believe back then. And I believe now. So anyway, 2017, 2018, that's when I was looking at the census records. That's the first time I talked openly about tracking my ancestors and doing ancestry and having genealogy books. So my bookshelf is right here. You can't really see it, but I have genealogy books in my bookshelf. That's the first time I really talked about it. Then I would take a pause every few years. I'd find a whole lot of information, and then I have to integrate it and take it in and be like, oh wow, that was a lot. and then I'll take a break. So the next break came during and a little bit after COVID. So in 2022, I decided to take this class, and it wasn't a traditional genealogy class. It was cracking the ancestral code with Yeye Louisa Tish. I had never heard of Louisa Tish when I had taken this class. Okay, I didn't know who she was. I was looking for my ancestors, and I took this class, found out who she was, found out that just about a lot of people know who she is. She is an elder in the ancestral and in the African traditional religion and a few other things. She's an elder in that community, right? And I was really, that class, it caught me because it was for three things: remembrance, reverence, and resilience. Resilience is a big word for me. So the resilience of my ancestors. How did they live? What did they go through? How did they survive so that we, this generation now, could be here and forget, right? How did they survive enough for us to forget, right? And so and I took that, and I would say that became my spiritual genealogy studies, which really also led me down very specific paths. And like I took a few DNA tests, and some of them were a total waste of money, and I would say don't take that one. But then I took others that kind of made me laugh. I don't remember what year I did it, but I did African ancestry after my dad did it. I did African ancestry. If you're a woman, the only kind of ancestry test you can take is the one that's going to go up the matrilineal line of your blood. So your mother, okay, your mother's mother, your mother, mama them, right? And so I took that test with mama them, and that test did not come back African anything. It came back, you are Native American, right? So I kind of laughed, actually, because I think I knew that that's what the test was going to say, but I just wanted, but it didn't say what tribe. I already knew the tribe because my mom had already told me, and I said, okay, that kind of seemed it for me. So yes, I'm one of I think they have this little note that says, in some circumstances, we will not be able to find you an African tribe or whatever they say on the test. I'm one of those people. They did not find an African anything for me. They said I'm Native American. Okay, sounds good. So so then in 2023, I went on a sister cousin trip with my cousins. I loved that trip. I didn't love it at the time. I'll talk to him about that later, but I love it now. Like, I think back. So me and my older cousin, we were to have a conversation during one of the time. I don't know, we were in a hotel, and we were having a conversation, and she's the one that said, hey, one of our ancestors was in the Trail of Tears, and because of, so now this is the what it sounds like to have the oral stories of your family passed on, right? Oral stories are very important in genealogy. Who has the oral stories, and is anyone collecting them? And so the oral story that she told me is, hey, we had an ancestor in the Trail of Tears. She was able to save the family. She made some sort of sacrifice that saved the family so that we could all be here today. I still, to this day, that's what I'm looking for. That's one of the answers I'm looking for. What was the sacrifice she made so that we can be here today? And I know my spiritual folk will be like, you could just pray about that and you'll get the answer. I want both. I want the answer and I want the confirmation. Okay, I just want that. So she said that answer had been that, not the answer, that ancestor. So I'm still looking for that and who that is. 2024. So last year I had a big surgery, and when I had that big surgery, I was able to sit down and take a knee, and I needed to take that knee. And so whenever I take a knee, I'm finding out that I like to dig into my past again. And so I joined a Choctaw heritage group on social media, and I just looked because the group was not very friendly to Choctaw, and that's the first time I heard Choctaw Freedmen. I hadn't heard that before. And the group was not very, positive is not the right word. We'll just say they weren't very nice when it came to certain things. But I was reading the post anyway, and I was reading the post when someone had mentioned they went to go talk to genealogy. And I said, oh, and from reading, I was thinking, I didn't know that there was genealogy. And so in 2024, I sent an email to genealogy, and I told genealogy, Choctaw genealogy, I said, hey, this is what I know. Can you send me anything you have? And they replied back. They said, sure, this is all we have here are the records that are in the record. She had sent me stuff I'd never seen before. So that was the first time I actually saw the Choctaw Freedmen record. And I had already seen the Choctaw by blood record. So I had already seen our female ancestor, and so great 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 grandma, and then the great great grandma as kids, and all her brothers and sisters. I had already seen that. I also saw that my great great great, I get the greats wrong, that grandmother, she's the child of Ishcomer, which my understanding is this was a name that was known in the Choctaw community. And so she was a child of the Ishcomers, and she married a Choctaw freedman. And so, which was interesting today to find someone had written an article about this, and they don't know any of the family at all. So that was very interesting to find out about today. And so they were the first ones to send me the card that showed both. They had the card that showed the great-great-great-grandmother and the kids, and the card that showed the Choctaw Freedmen. Now, what was shocking and what I was not prepared to see was on the Choctaw Freedmen roll, it said who his owner was. And then it also said who his parents were and who their owners were. I wasn't prepared for that when I first read it. It took me a minute to like soak all that in. And so then I messaged genealogy again, and I said, can you explain this to me? What does it even mean to be a Choctaw freedman? And I think she thought it was obvious. It was not obvious to me. Up until that point, I did not know that the 5 civilized tribes had slaves. I didn't know that, okay? I didn't know. And so I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I was not prepared. I wasn't prepared emotionally for that. And I said, oh, okay. I'm better with that now. I let my family know as well, so I wasn't prepared at first. And so now I've got the card that shows the whole family. I've got the husband and I've got the wife, and he was a freedman, which means he was not enslaved, but it did still say who the owner was, all that kind of stuff. And so then after that, so now I have all this information, and so now we're going to get into 2025, right? So I have all this information, and I'm like, I still feel like there's things I don't know, because I have whatever's on the card, and I'm like, now I need just the pieces. And so something funny happened this year. It wasn't funny, but I posted about it, and I said, hey everyone, so I've retired. You all know I've retired. I retired, and I joined the Women's Commission in my county, and I'm serving the women in my county, women and girls, and, really the family. And for Domestic Violence Month, we were doing a quilt, right? And so we did a visualization for the quilt. I saw a whole scene, and I started making it. I didn't think anything of that, right? And I'm sewing, I'm doing, and I'm like, wait, I kind of like this. And then I share with other people, like, that was really, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I have never quilted a day in my life, and I love this. And this is a natural thing for me. And up until I did this quilt, I thought the sewing gene has skipped a generation, okay? My mama can sew. She can make whole outfits. As you all have seen me post before on here, my son can sew. Do you know who didn't teach him? Me. I didn't teach him how to sew anything. He just knew how to sew and how to use a machine. Okay, so then me and my mom, November, now we're at last month, we decide that I asked her, I said, Mom, I want to go to the Choctaw Nation. I want to register as a Choctaw veteran. So like I said, I've been registered as a member of the tribe since 1999. I am not a tribal member that was getting any kind of benefits. I don't even know if I registered for that, but I wasn't registering for benefits. I wanted to just make sure, I think I really want to make sure the passage of time and history is there for the future. And so I registered as a Choctaw veteran and then updated my card and all that stuff. While we were there and on the road there, I started, talking to Mom about little things. She said, Mom, was there anyone in the family that quilted? And then she remembered that her, I think, great Hattie, the child of the great on the census, she and her sister, I think they called her Lula, but I think her name was Lorena or something like that, Lula, they were in a quilting circle. And then I was like, okay, that started to click, right? And so then this is going to come back around to today. I'm like, oh wow, they were in a quilting circle. And so while we were there, we went to the cultural center, and a lot of things mom brought up in the cultural center. And that's when I talked to their genealogy department again, who said, we don't have anything new. Actually, they did though. I think they have more than they think they have. They gave me some more worksheets, and not worksheets, but they gave me what else was in the file. So the other part of what that was in the file was when the babies were registered in the 1890s. In fact, from her showing me the sheets of when, now when I say the babies, one of the babies was my great grandmother, or great, these greats I get. But she was a baby. She was young. She wasn't a baby. She was a toddler when they registered her. And she was registered September of 1899. I bring that up because I was registered in October of 1999. 100 years later, 100 years after my ancestor was registered with the tribe as a baby, I was registered with the tribe, but as a teenager. But still, 100 years, that's a big deal to me. So the quilting. So we visit Choctaw Nation. In the area, we find out about boarding school. So this is part of the history. So we found out about boarding school. So I didn't know that the Choctaw children were sent to boarding schools. I didn't know that. So I'm learning these things. As I'm learning, I'm taking it all in. And so I learned about the boarding schools and the impact of quilting today when a historian called me today. And I'm not going to give his name to really protect him, but a historian called me today, and he started giving me some history. And so the history included that, yes, the women in the tribe quilted. Yes, there were quilting circles. He even gave me, I'm going to go look at a website and a few things like that to go look up the quilting. He said the reason they started quilting was, he gave me year groups from the year 19, I don't know if it was 19 something or 18 something, but from the year, y'all bear with me because I think this is important. Okay, the late 1800s to the early 1900s boarding schools. And at some point, the Choctaw Nation lost control of the boarding schools. When they lost control of the boarding schools, traditional arts and crafts, as in, traditional to the tribe, was taken away. Those included basket weaving, crafts. He told me something else. And they were taught quilting. And so quilting became the approved art at the end of the late 1800s, beginning of the 1900s. And so quilting was passed down after that. Like I said, by the time you get to my generation, I didn't even know they quilted. So that's the whole thing. He mentioned quilting is protest disguised as obedience, memory stitched into fabric, culture refusing to die. I love that. I love that. So that was what the quilting was. And even though it wasn't passed down to me in like obvious, the way things are passed down, I still received it. I still received some ancestral pass down that didn't come through until it was time for me to do something in a quilting circle for domestic violence. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm pretty good at this. I picked it up real fast. How, right? And so that's how I found out it was. So I really did think that quilting skipped me. Let's see, what else? All right, so yeah, survival evidence. So I'm still going to follow the thing quilting. I want to learn more about it. I want to see their quilts. I want to see their art. I would love if they had taken, I don't know, I'm hoping they took pictures around that time of some of their quilting circles. I would love to see it. The next thing, the identity. Identity is important. Who are you, right? I'm in that stage right after retiring from the military. I was a military child who joined the military, and now I'm retired. And so what is the identity, right? And then I'm finding that identity is a very large part of this Choctaw story. And so my mom had said while I was there, I can't remember if she said this in her house or she said it when we were visiting the cultural center, that back then some of the Choctaw youth, I believe, were afraid to say that they were Choctaw. It was embarrassing or something like that. And so that made me wonder, was that why some of the Black Choctaw, the black natives, was that why they chose to be listed as black or colored? So those are some of the things that are on the census records, black or colored, or there's a few other things that are on there too that I saw. And so in the rolls, like I said, in the rolls, Choctaw by blood, and then it gave like a percentage. And multiple people have told me, remember, they're like, the Dawes Roll is something of the government at the time, not the tribe. The tribe did not treat each other by blood quantum. Blood quantum is what the government forced on them. That is not how they treated each other. And so the whole, you're by blood, you're by lightness of skin, you're by darkness of skin. They were saying, and multiple people have said that that's not how the tribe treated each other. That is how the government viewed them and treated them. He did tell me that, because then I also asked about the history of Atoka and Stringtown, all that kind of stuff. He did tell me that that Choctaw Freedmen and their descendants were treated as second-class citizens, but he kept saying not by the tribe, but by the government. And so they were treated as second-class citizens. So even though we had an ancestor who was Choctaw by blood, we also had ancestor that was Choctaw Freedman. The other thing I've also found was there's only one place that I saw where it shows him Choctaw Freedman, which was the Choctaw Freedman like roll. After that, he on his thing it says Choctaw by adoption. So I don't know if to protect themselves, if freedmen had to be taken off, if that was also not something to be proud of at the time. Unsure, right? But at some point it said Choctaw by blood for her and Choctaw by adoption. And so I'm still looking into and trying to understand the politics of that. And so, like I said, this is our story. So November, December, going back home, I got the phone call today to give me all this backstory, and which also included wild onions and eggs. And so let me smile about that. So since I can remember being a little girl, Grandma always made this dish, wild onions and eggs, and it seemed like only my Texas family had wild onions and eggs, right? And so years later, when I'm doing research, I found out wild onions and eggs is a part of a Choctaw tradition. It is part of a spring ceremony that the tribe does. And so let me see, because I wrote that down too, because that's something that makes me smile when I think about the wild onions. So wild onions, he said the historian said the wild onions were actually an adaptation. It was something that they adapted based on being moved to Oklahoma. So what I don't know is, what were they doing before the wild onions and eggs spring celebration ceremony? What was it before wild onions and eggs? Now, other spring ceremonies that deal with eggs, which some of us know, Easter deals with eggs. If you know anything about, what is one of the other pagan holidays? Because, I study all that. I study all of it. What is it? Oestra. I'm sorry to all my pagan friends, I do not remember right this second. But a lot of them deal with eggs. So I don't know, right? I don't know the full thing of wild onions and eggs in the spring celebration and ceremony, but I just love it, and so that means something to me. The historian told me that also wild onions and eggs is as a ceremony, a thing. It went up north, and so he said they do it in Michigan. They do it with leeks, and so I love that kind of stuff. They do it with leeks, and yeah, they do it with leeks. What else? Like I said, he said it was a springtime. He said that they have. They do have a video, so I'm going to find the video on YouTube, and it was Choctaw Nation OK and their wild onion celebration. So I have to do more research on that, but that was one of the fun things that I think was really, really good. And so now I'm going to talk about some things that helped me, and some of the things have helped me over time. And so one of the things that have helped me over time is the use of AI. I have AI now. So when the historian was talking to me, I was able to write a lot of notes. Then I put my notes into AI, and then I asked AI to look at any history, websites, anything. Take my notes and look across the internet for anything that substantiates anything that's going on. my ChatGPT can do that. And it did. And that's when it found the article written by someone else who's not a part of the family in 2021. Someone who's not a part of the family and someone that doesn't know the family. And he was just writing about Choctaw Freedmen. He was just writing and just happened to write about our ancestor. And so I've already reached out to him to see if he can be helpful in any way. But AI helped me send emails, I would say respectful emails, to take out the emotion, to the genealogy, to the Historical Preservation Society. And then there's another one that goes with the land or something like that, who I'm sending that out to them too. It helped me gather records. It helped me understand the history and like got all the stuff and then put it in. Hey, based on this goes with this. Based on this evidence you have, this evidence is confirmed here. It does help me speak more confidently. I'm not looking at the information and saying, I wonder. No, I have proof that these are all correct things. It helped me organize my timelines. It really did. I can really see like, hey, there are some timelines that I didn't even mention in here that I think is very important, which have to do with Atoka, but I can save that for later. But he was saying the Trail of Tears happened around 1830. There were additional removals in the 1840s and 50s. He said there was another removal at the beginning of the 1900s, 1902 to 1903. And in 1903, by train, there was a group of Mississippi Choctaw that were dropped off in Atoka. That's not my family. My family has been in Oklahoma, from what we could see on the Dawes Roll, since at least 1893. Most likely they were there sooner because her father, Nelson Ishcomer, was dead by the time she filled out the Dawes Rolls. And so I'm still having to track Nelson Ishcomer, his wife, and on up to see who made the trek and who, all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking for that. So yeah, still looking for those information, for all that information, a lot of information today. So in closing, this is Legacy and Love. So if you're doing this and you want to find out about your people, you need to at least know one name. Look at the Dawes Rolls. Ask who in the family has the stories that haven't been written down. Write them down if you can, right before your elders pass away. Try to get as many stories as you can. And ask elders if they remember what elder stories were, right? I'm having to ask my mom, do you remember when you were a little girl, what were the conversations around you? She's like, I was a little girl, right? But there's things that she does remember. So my family, I think about, hey, who are we, right? So on my mom's side, we are Choctaw by blood, Choctaw by adoption, Choctaw Freedmen. We are also African by ancestry on both sides. So Choctaw Freedmen, so African by ancestry. We are women by strength, right? So at some point, that male ancestor died, and he died before all the women. And there's somewhere in there, because of what women could or could not own, that's part of the story too. And so I'm also trying to learn that. I want to learn who made the sacrifice, and then two, what happened when they lost everything, whatever everything was. I don't even know what everything was to understand that. And then we're not a question mark in someone else's research, right? Like I said, when I saw someone else's, we're not a question mark in anyone's research. We are real people with real lives. We are our authors of our own history. We are, So thank you for being a witness to this story. Thank you for those who have seen me out and about, because I know you watch even if you don't say anything, because then when we're out and about, you'll come and ask me a question or something like that. Thank you for asking me a question. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for asking me a question. And let me say thank you in Choctaw. I'm trying to learn how to do that. I gifted my mom a Choctaw dictionary. Oh, let me talk about that. So up until recently, my mom would always say that my great, 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 or however many greats, grandmothers, she was illiterate, right? She would always say that. And so when we went through the cultural center, and as she was looking at all the different things, she said, almost as if maybe she was saying it to herself, she was like, Grandmama spoke Choctaw. Right? And I was like, what? Say that again. She spoke Choctaw. She was fluent in Choctaw. And it made me think a few things. If I was to go back a few generations, would we understand each other? I think we would understand each other in the heart. And then two, if she spoke fluent Choctaw, maybe she wrote it too. I don't think that's illiterate. This whole time I've been thinking she's illiterate and there's a problem. No, she spoke Choctaw. And I don't know if she wrote it as well. And so I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to learn these different facets of the family, and it has been a story of resilience, a story of remembrance, and a story for me of restoration. And so with that, I'm done for today. Let me know if you all have questions. I'm here for them. And I want to say yekoke. Hopefully I said that right. And just thank you. Thank you for watching. Let me know what questions you have. Talk to you later. Bye.